Welcome back to Hobby Universe Outdoors. I'm Len, and today we're going to be talking about and working on this John Deere L110 lawn tractor. Now, I came across this listing on Facebook Marketplace. It was $250. Really limited information and only one poor quality picture was in that listing, but it still seemed like it could be a pretty good deal based on what I could see. Went to check it out this morning, and I did end up paying the full $250 price for it. But the $250 was more of a fair deal. It wasn't a smoking deal or anything like that. It wasn't a steal. And the reason I say that, there's a couple things. Cosmetically, once you get up close to it, it's really not that pretty. The seat's in pretty rough shape. The hood does have a crack in it. Looks like it's been repaired at least one other time. But overall, the deck is solid. It's not all rusted out. The frame underneath the tractor, that's solid, again, in very good condition. I will say that my biggest concern is the fact that I didn't get to hear it run. The guy that was selling it said he's not been able to get it started all year. It just will not fire. It will turn over, and he showed me that it would turn over. He had a battery. He stuck in it temporarily. It didn't come with a battery. Anyway, he was able to get it to rotate and turn over, and I could hear it. And everything sounded okay. It just wouldn't fire. So that's one of the things I'm going to dig into today. And I'm also going to get it cleaned up and kind of go over the whole tractor, with the goal being to fix it up and then resell it, put it back on Facebook Marketplace. Not really going to make a lot of money on it, if any. I just like tinkering with stuff, and I'm kind of excited to dig into it to see what I find. Let's get started. Like I mentioned, at least initially, this deck does not appear to be in bad condition. I do have a little bit of surface rust here. There's a little bit over here, but I'm not seeing any holes in the deck or any really bad signs of rust that could impact it negatively from a structural standpoint. One of the areas I always like to look at is around the welds, because if you're going to end up with rust, a lot of times that's where it'll happen, right around those welds. Again, that's looking pretty solid. I'm going to need to get it cleaned up. We've got all these little piles of grass and crap just up on here. So I'm going to take it out. I'm going to get this all cleaned up so we can get a better look at it. I'm also going to flip it over so we can get a look at the underside as well. As I mentioned, the seat is actually in pretty bad shape, but I think one of the things I can do is to use, honestly, like some Gorilla Tape or something, just to kind of hold it together, and then get a decent seat cover and put over the top of it. I will look to see if maybe I can find a used seat or an aftermarket seat that's not too expensive, but overall, I bet you I'm just going to tape it back together and put a cover over top. Looking at the tires, I'm seeing some really tiny cracks, just dry rot in the tires, especially in the back. But this front one's really bad, and the other side's going to be very similar. I have a really deep, severe crack here on this front tire. I'm actually surprised it's holding air. It is, but I don't know for how much longer. Now, this tractor is 21 years old. I checked the date code on it. At 21 years old, I'm guessing these are probably the original tires. And where I've got to be careful is, as I'm fixing this thing up, I think, well, I could just get new tires and put those on. I was trying to find a cheap way to fix the seat that I just talked about a second ago. Maybe I could buy an aftermarket seat. I could do that. The hood's got a crack in it and some other stuff, and I'll show you that here in a second as well. And it would be easy to buy these parts and pieces and put them all on this tractor and make it look pretty. But if you spend all of that money, are you really going to get that money back out of it when you try to sell it? So you've got to kind of pick and choose and be frugal when you do things like that. Otherwise, you end up losing money on it, and that's not the goal. Looking at the hood on the tractor, it looks like it's been repaired once before. This is, I don't know what the heck that is. It's actually tape. Why would there be tape on there? Huh. Okay, so I'm going to have to investigate that. That's not the stock bolt. That I know for sure. I thought this was fiberglass, like a fiberglass repair that they had done previously, but that doesn't appear to be the case. It's some kind of a tape. And before I go ahead and start picking all that off, I want to investigate, find out why it's there. And it does have a crack across the front here. Not uncommon, unfortunately, for these hoods to crack. And a lot of people will say, oh, wish it was metal. Metal hood would be better. I actually think it might be a horse apiece. The metal, the paint will chip off, they rust, they dent, where this simply cracks. So no matter what, if you run into something bad will happen to the front of your tractor. So just try not to do that. Something else that somebody did, and I'm really not sure why, but it looks like they painted the whole front of this thing, and I don't know why you would do that, because it still has the headlights and the bulbs and the wiring and everything is still in place, but they painted right over the top of this, and I know they painted it because they overshot it and there's overspray along the edges here. So not sure why you would do that. I don't think that's something we're going to be able to undo, again, without purchasing new parts and pieces for this, which I probably won't do. Similar story on this side. We've got some more of that tape over here, and you can see where they overshot when they painted that black for whatever reason. And then there is another small crack here, and it looks like they've already repaired that. Looks like there might be some fiberglass here. Once I get the hood open and off, I'll be able to look on the back side, but I'll bet you that's what we're going to find. Get this hood open, maybe we'll pop it all the way off. And smaller tractors, a lot of times, they just simply slide out. Yep, here we go. So this is loose. Not sure what's going on with that. Shouldn't be a big deal. Probably just a missing piece of hardware. This tractor's got a 17.5 horsepower Kohler engine. And like everything else, it appears to be pretty good. It's dirty. I mean, it needs a bath for sure, and we're going to do that. But overall, it does not appear to be in bad condition. And looking at the oil filter, they put a date on here, which I'm a big fan of doing that, by the way. It looks like October 14th of 2023, they replaced the oil, and they used full synthetic, is what it says over here. So, it's been a couple years since it's had an oil changed. To be honest, that's a little bit better than what I thought I was going to find. A lot of times you buy these, cheap used tractors like this, and you can just tell the oil's not been changed in a very long time. Does not appear to be the case here, so that's really encouraging. Something else I just noticed is this has definitely been repainted at some point, and I can tell that for sure based on a couple different things. One is that the paint has like an orange peel type texture. I moved one of the lights over to kind of show that a little bit better, but it's got this weird rough texture, and that's an indication that it's been repainted. But also the label here, so some sort of a probably operator instructions or safety instructions, something like that. There's this label here that's been painted right over the top of. So again, that's another good indication that it was repainted. Not super concerned with that, tapping around and feeling it. It doesn't appear that there was any major damage they were trying to cover up or rot or anything like that. Maybe it was just ugly and they decided it was time to repaint. I have no idea. Not super concerned, but did want to show you that. To start digging into the engine, simply the first thing I'm going to do is see if I can get it to fire up. I did check the oil. There's plenty of oil in it. And I checked the gas, and there is almost no gas in the tank. Now, I got to believe this guy was smarter than that. I can't believe that the only reason he couldn't get it to start was because it was out of gas. But I'm not sure how old that gas is in here, and there's only a little bit. So I'm going to add probably like a quart of gas to the tank. That way I know that the fuel that's getting pulled into the engine is fresh. We'll be able to eliminate that as a possible problem. The battery I have that I'm going to use for this test won't actually fit in the compartment where the battery's supposed to go on this thing. So I'm just simply going to set it here in the middle of the tractor, and then I'm going to run my jumper cables around and make the connections that way. So I've got the negative and the positive both connected, and I wanted to make sure that this positive wasn't touching any part of the engine, wasn't touching the negative cable, no part of the frame, because all of those items would cause a short between the positive and negative, and we want to avoid that for sure. Now, I haven't connected the battery yet. I wanted to make sure all this stuff was clear. Now that we've confirmed that, we can get the battery connected. See what happens if we put power to it. Okay, the hour meter on the dash came on, so that means we've got power to the system. That's good. So at this point, I guess the only thing I've got to do is give it a try. Either the connections I've got are not that good, or my battery's dead, so let me investigate that real quick, see what I find. I readjusted the cables a little bit. Before, I just had the clamps on the skinny part of that little connector. I moved it up where the wire connects to that connector. I think that's going to give a better grip. Nah, might be a dead battery. Let me get some juice into that and we'll try it again. So I thought about it for a minute, and rather than waiting for that other battery to get charged, I brought my other tractor in, I connected the jumper cables to it. I know for sure that battery has plenty of juice, so we're going to try that. Now, it's still not turning over all the way, so the engine's not froze up. I mean, it definitely moves, but it's only rotating a little bit, so something else going on here. I'm going to have to dig into that a little bit deeper. So I'm going to get these cables disconnected. And something else I just thought of, I don't know how likely it is, but so I picked this thing up this morning, and to be able to do that, I do not have ramps to get this thing into the back of my pickup truck. It wasn't running anyway, and I don't know if I'd have been able to push them up a steep set of ramps. And I have a large trailer, but I didn't want to drag that into town to pick this thing up, and I don't have a small trailer. So anyway, what I did was I actually stood this tractor up on its front end, put the rear wheels just inside the bed, and then lifted the front of the tractor and slid it in. And I'm wondering if when I had it up on its nose, and I mean it was almost exactly straight up and down, I'm wondering if I got oil into the cylinder. So it could even be like it's hydrolocked. I think I better look at that before I start trying to get it to start anymore, because if it is indeed hydrolocked, I could actually damage the engine by trying to get that piston to move if that cylinder is full of oil. I got to take a look at that. So I found something that is pretty interesting and could be really good news. This is the spark plug cable, and it slides inside here onto the plug. But when I went to pull it off, usually to get one of these boots off of the spark plug, you have to rotate it a little bit, and there's a fair amount of pulling. And you don't want to pull on the wire, by the way. Always grab the boot itself. But anyway, when I went to pull it off, it was just dangling there. I don't even know if it was fully on the spark plug. So it definitely wouldn't start if that were the case. You know, I'm thinking maybe he was checking the spark plug when he started having issues with it. Maybe he just didn't put it back on all the way. I just thought that was pretty interesting. We're going to get this spark plug out of here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be looking for oil in the cylinder and on the spark plug itself, just to make sure that that cylinder is not full of oil. Because like I mentioned, if it is, that would prevent it from starting, and you could, again, actually damage the engine if you try to get it to start. Nope, that spark plug is dry as a bone. Now I will try to turn it over again without the plug in there. There won't be any compression, so it'll be easier for the engine to turn over. But the spark plug looks pretty good. All right, we've got the battery cables connected again, so we're going to try it without that spark plug being in there. So that's turning over pretty good. I'm feeling inside of there. Yeah, it's dry, so I'm not getting a lot of oil or anything like that blowing out of there. So again, I don't think my concern about oil getting into the cylinder is valid. So one thing I want to clarify real quick. A minute ago I said that the spark plug looked good. Honestly, it doesn't look good. As far as having oil on it or damage or anything like that, yeah, it looks good. But it is old. It looks like it's probably ready to be replaced. So that's something we'll look at if we get to that point. So I already have it out. So I'm going to check to see if we have spark when we turn the engine over, because that would cause it not to start for sure. Hopefully I don't get zapped. I hate when that happens. Well, we definitely have spark. Since we know for sure we've got spark, I'm going to go ahead and get that plug reinstalled, and then we'll get that spark plug boot put back on, and this time we'll make sure it's on all the way. And then we're going to try it again, see if we can get this thing to fire. So I just started to smell gas a little bit, and I found a gas leak. And right on the bottom of this float bowl, I've got a little bit of a drip coming out, and it feels like it's coming right out of the bottom. There's a little bolt on the bottom, and that's going to be for the drain. And it feels like that's where it's coming from. Up top here, it's all dry. I think the problem is with that, so I'm going to see if I can get on there. I mean, I don't want to go too tight on it. I certainly don't want to strip it out, and this is a pretty big wrench. Hopefully that takes care of that. I'm going to give that a minute, because I certainly don't want gas dripping out all over my tractor and the floor and then get it started up and have an issue with a fire. All right, so we're ready to give it a try again, see if we can get this thing to turn over. So that's awesome. It actually sounds like it wants to start. It didn't fire, but it was doing more than just simply turning over. Now, I didn't have the throttle up at all. I'm going to give it some choke and try it again. That is awesome. I gotta believe it was nothing more than that spark plug boot not being seated all the way. I can't believe it could be that simple. I never get that lucky. That's crazy. It ran great. As soon as I gave it some choke, it fired right up. It idled very well at a low RPM, throttled all the way up. Again, ran smooth, no missing. It does have about 554 hours on it. Earlier when I turned it on, I showed a little bit of that. So that's decent amount of hours, but man, it sounded really, really healthy. I am super stoked. While it did fire up and it ran great, I'm happy about that. I do still have a problem with a gas leak. I'm not sure what's going on here. It is definitely coming out from under the carburetor, the bottom of that bowl, I think. But it's enough gas that I can't let it go like that. I'm definitely going to have to get that fixed. That's what we're going to look at next. This has an inline valve to be able to shut that gas off. That's really convenient. So we're going to get that shut off and then we can start investigating over there. I'm going to start digging into that gas leak a little bit and I'm going to remove the bowl. Ooh, ow. I've got a cut on my knuckle and that gasoline just reminded me of that. That was smart. So this is the plug. The gas was leaking out around that. And I'm getting this green stuff. I wonder if that's almost like a sealer or something they put around the threads. Maybe it was already leaking and they tried to fix that. Pull that off completely. So that probably wasn't smart. I just pulled that off and this is, well, I thought it was a gasket, but you know what? Now that I look at it, I actually don't think that's a gasket. I think that's just a gasket sealer and I have some of that. So I'll be able to put that back on. Well, here we are. It is day 2. I went out last night and I picked up a new battery for the tractor, the proper size. And also my Permatex, my gasket maker. I had a tube of that. I checked it out. Completely solid, dried up, no good. Got another tube of that. So now we can get back after it. First thing I'm going to do is get this battery installed. Pretty straightforward, not a lot going on here. You should be able to just set it in place. Then we'll get this thing connected. And then I'm going to start working on that gasket on that float bowl. That should be pretty easy. Again, that's not something I think is going to take a lot of time. Now, ideally, there's probably an O-ring or something that would go on the top of that float bowl to make that seal. And, you know, I got to believe that's going to be the preferred method. But I don't have that, so I'm not going to be able to do that without ordering parts and waiting, which isn't something that I want to do. You know, my goal is just to get this thing done so we can get it out of the garage. Again, I want to be able to flip it and move it as quickly as possible. I don't want to sit on it. I'm going to work on getting that float bowl reinstalled. I did get this cleaned out really good. Wanted to make sure it was nice and clean. And that surface that I'm going to be sealing with this gasket maker, I wanted to make sure that was clean and ready to go, and it is now. And also wanted to mention, I'm using fuel-resistant gasket maker. That's going to be very important because this will be exposed to gasoline. So I wanted to make sure that I had the right stuff. I'm going to have some cleanup to do after I get this on. It's actually not too bad. I just don't want so much in there that it's going to interfere with the float moving around. That should be good right there. I did put a little bit of that gasket maker around the head of that bolt too, that screw that holds this thing on, and that'll help seal that as well. We don't want it to leak. That's the whole reason we took it off in the first place, right? Get on there. Again, I don't want it over tight, but I want to make sure that it's tight enough not to leak, but I certainly don't want to strip anything out. So I think we're going to be in good shape on that. Now we're going to fire it up, let it run, and make sure we don't have any leaks. Something I just thought of that I wish I would have thought of earlier was that it's probably going to take this gasket maker a little while to dry before I expose it to that gas. Check the directions. It's true. I should have given myself enough time to allow that stuff to sit. I'm not really going to wait the 24 hours this stuff recommends. I have some tools I can put away and move some things around the garage, but I'm going to give it a half hour, maybe an hour max. And I think we're going to be okay. I mean, that stuff, I got it on my fingers, and inside of a couple minutes, it was completely dry to the touch. So giving it an hour, I think I'll be in good shape. It's not a really thick coating either. It's really, really thin around there. I think we'll be fine. I'm in a hurry. I hope I don't regret pushing through it without giving it a full 24 hours. Let's see what happens. I'm going to give this a few more minutes to dry. I got the garage cleaned up about as good as it's going to be, at least for right now. But while I let that sit a little while longer, I wanted to share something with you. And it's what I'm going to do with the profit I make. Hopefully I make a profit and don't lose money on this tractor. Initially, I bought it for content for this channel. Sometimes it's difficult to come up with content, so it was for that. And also, I enjoy stuff like this. I like to monkey around and tinker, so it was going to kind of feed that hobby a little bit as well. Well, yesterday in the mail, I got a flyer from our local volunteer fire department, and it was a fundraiser. And I thought, why don't I do something like that? So whatever profit I make on this tractor, assuming, again, I make profit, I'll donate that to the local fire department. I know they'll appreciate it. I really wasn't doing this to put money in my own pocket, again, looking for content, looking for something to feed my hobby. So that's what I'm going to do. And at the end of the second video, so this is going to be a two-part series, the second video, at the end of that, I will show what all of the costs were for this and what I was able to sell it for and how much I was able to donate to that fire department. So I just thought that was pretty cool. That's something I wanted to share with you. And if the feedback's good in doing something like that, I'll probably do that with the next one as well. It's been a little over an hour, probably like an hour and 15 minutes. I think that's going to be good enough. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to take it outside, drive it around a little while. I just want to make sure that it runs okay, that it drives okay, the brakes and everything work the way they're supposed to. And if all of that checks out, then we can start getting to work on some of the other things we're going to need to do before we make it available for sale. Now, looking at the mower deck, I did find a potential issue with that, and I'm not going to get into that here right now. That'll be in the next video, but I was a little discouraged to see it. I think we can work through it, but again, we'll touch on that next time. Let's get this thing fired up, get it outside, and see what it does. Beautiful day out. Decided to shoot a little bit of this video outside. It's a beautiful day. The sun is out. I'd be crazy not to be out here enjoying it. That tractor ran great. I had zero issues. Nothing weird was happening, so I'm really happy to see that. The rest of the work I have to do to it should be pretty straightforward and easy. I did run into that weird little issue with the mower deck that I'll go over in the second half of this series, but even outside of that, I mean, I don't think this is going to be bad at all. One thing I did want to mention that I feel is important is, like on the seat, I talked about using Gorilla Tape to kind of do a ghetto repair on that and hold it together, and then put a seat cover over it to hold it together, and also so it would look better. When it's time for me to sell this and people come look at it, I'm not going to hide that stuff. I'm going to make sure they understand that under that seat cover is a bunch of Gorilla Tape. I'm not looking to pull one over on anybody or take advantage. I've had that happen to me. I've been on the other end of that before. I didn't appreciate it. And, I like it when people are upfront with me. So that's how I'm going to be with the tractor when I sell it. Not going to make a ton of money on it. That's okay. Just hoping to flip it quick, get it out of my garage, make a few bucks, get that over to the local fire department, and then move on to the next one. Next, I'm going to be picking up a spark plug, an oil filter, an air filter, some oil. Give this thing a really great tune-up before we put it up for sale. Also, still have to work on that mower deck and the weird stuff I found there. Not a huge deal. And I've also decided that I'm gonna find and purchase that correct O-ring for the top of that float bowl where it connects underneath the carburetor. It's just the right way to do it. That gasket maker is holding up just fine right now. But again, what's it going to be, like a few bucks or something for that O-ring? So that's the right way to do it. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm also going to take the blades off, get those sharpened. All of that stuff will be in that second video. And then don't forget, at the end of that video, I'm also going to talk about how much I was able to sell this for, what my costs were, and how much I was able to donate to that local fire department. As always, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. If you're not already a subscriber and you want to follow along the second half of this series and you enjoy content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Again, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Be safe. Enjoy the rest of your day.